A lot of people like to talk about how bad Marvel Comics fans have it, and I will freely admit I'm not the biggest Marvel fan, but I am a Marvel fan, and Marvel is very, very bad. But, you know, every once in a while you get a Doom one-shot from a Jonathan Hickman and Sanford Creed. Every once in a while you do get a Wolverine deep cut. Every once in a while you actually get something good and worthwhile out of Marvel Comics. It is certainly not the rule. It is an aberration, but it does happen. And I would firmly maintain that the most abused fans in all of comic books remain Valiant Comics fans. Valiant Comics, small little publisher, you know, obviously created by Jim Shooter, you know, in the 90s, ended up being acquired by Acclaim. They destroyed it, trying to turn it into video game properties. Acquired by Dinesh Shamdasani, a lifelong Valiant fan, put his blood, sweat, and tears and all of his heart into that thing. He and Warren Simmons made Valiant Comics like the coolest little secret in comic books, the best shared universe that I've ever seen maintained in comic books over a pretty long period of time. There's about 3 or 4 years that is just absolutely bulletproof. But they had signed a deal. They were going to make some movies. They were going to make some TV shows. They got some co-financing from a company called, I think, DMG Entertainment, which was a Chinese company. Once they got close to producing the movie, DMG had an option to buy them out, and they did, thinking that they were going to have this next enormous shared movie universe with Valiant Comics. It didn't work out with the Bloodshot movie. And ever since then, Valiant Comics has absolutely sucked. You can see the moment that Dinesh and Warren Simmons leave the company, that Heather Ontos and Joseph Illich and other people come in to run it. It's like right when Harbinger Wars 2 was announced, all of a sudden, Exo Manowar from Matt Kent isn't quite as good. All of a sudden, he's doing things that don't make any sense. He ends up having to rush back to Earth. Everything sucks from then on, for the most part, other than the end of Christos Gage's Ninja K series, which is actually really good. And then there's one weird like aberration called Shadow Man by Cullen Bunn, of all people, that's actually really good. But otherwise, every single thing that they produced absolutely sucks. Valiant fans have not had it good in several years, and it's actually about to get worse. You think it can't get worse, but you are wrong, because we've got new information about what the resurgence of the Valiant universe is actually all leading to. The finale of the Resurgence of the Valiant Universe crossover event with Fred Van Lint and his friends will hit in January 2025 with an exercised final issue that promises to change everything and set up the future of the publishing line. What are Valiant Comics' big plans after Resurgence? Expect an absolute ultimate energon type of line-wide relaunch at the Resurgence event called Valiant Beyond, a new micro line of relaunch titles intended to appeal to both lapsed readers and new fans in the style of Hasbro's Energon universe and Marvel's Ultimate line and DC's Absolute Universe. That doesn't even make any fucking sense. Now do it, does it? If you look at Hasbro's Energon universe, it's basically picking up on the direct origins established in cartoons and going in a new direction with higher stakes and more death. It's a complete homage to the Transformers and G.I. Joe cartoons with a spin on it. That's what Energon is. The Ultimate Universe is a modern reimagining of Marvel heroes with some tweaks, but for the most part, giving you the better version of the hero that people want to see. In the case of Spider-Man, he's married and has kids. In the case of Black Panther, he's the king, and he's actually got some exciting stuff going on there. In the case of the Ultimates, maybe not so much. I do think Dennis Camp has kind of missed the boat. But they're not trying to go so far off the reservation with the characterization of the characters and going so dark that you can't actually recognize it as being a Marvel universe. It's different, but trying to be similar. That's what the Ultimate line is. Now, the Absolute line is nothing like Energon or the Ultimate line. You could say it's like an Ultimate style universe. It's absolutely not. It's the darkest version of a DC universe that you can imagine, but now there are multiple titles and it's all in a shared universe. It's the biggest, dumbest, most brutally murdering version of Batman that we've seen. It's a version of Wonder Woman that wasn't raised in paradise, that was raised in hell, and now has trouble communicating with people. It's Superman didn't arrive as a child on Earth to be raised by the Kents and have a love an embracement of humanity. It's Superman completely aloof because his parents were slaves on Krypton. And it's not even, for the most part, recognizable versions of the characters. There's nothing Batman really about Absolute Batman. There's nothing really Wonder Woman about Absolute Wonder Woman. There's certainly nothing Superman about Absolute Superman. So to say that you're going to do an Absolute, Energon, and Ultimate line with Absolute Beyond, like, how is that even possible, considering the three of them literally don't have anything to do with each other when it comes to even the concept of what they are? And then with Valiant Beyond, they couldn't even come up with an original name. We just had Spider-Man Beyond. And then you're just sitting here as a Valiant fan, you're like, oh my God, these people are fucking stupid. They don't even understand what Absolute and Ultimate or Energon are, and they couldn't even come up with an original fucking name. And this is the state of Valiant comic books, but we're going to get Valiant Beyond. What is Valiant Beyond, you ask? We do have an idea of what it might be. Artists are being asked to submit concept for characters like Exo Manowar, Shadow Man, Bloodshot, and Harbinger for new Beyond versions with an eye towards creating Valiant's own Absolute line of books. As part of a Valiant multiverse, writers have been told that almost everything is on the table as far as bringing back older characters and storylines from the 90s, Acclaim, and Dinesh-era Valiant comics. Word is characters will be placed in wildly different settings or have a tweak in their looks or origins, but will remain fundamentally familiar to longtime fans. So the setting is going to be completely different, but it's really the same character. And when you think about 90s Valiant and Acclaim Valiant and Dinesh-era Valiant, they have the same names, and certainly there are some similarities to them, but they're wildly diverging takes on the characters, and the universes don't in a whole lot of ways even resemble each other. Like, what is this? And you know, and you get so frustrated because I am an enormous Exo Manowar fan. He's my favorite superhero out there out of all of them. I named one of my children after Exo Manowar. Yes, there is a child out there named Exo Critical, and it's a real story. It really happened. And you keep getting these just kicks in the nuts and kicks in the nuts. Nobody wants anything from Acclaimed era Valiant. That stuff was all terrible. And Dinesh took the best stuff from the 90s era Valiant anyway and retweaked it for his era Valiant. You know, and came up with even better ideas. I want a continuation of the Dinesh era Valiant comics. You know, the stuff that happened just a few short years ago, but for some reason, they have not been able to even, in concept, realize what he was doing. It's the weirdest thing. You get like the Dennis Hopeless Hallam Exo Manowar after Matt Kent, and for some reason, Dennis Hopeless Hallam, everyone decided was a writer, like all on the same day. And next thing you know, he's writing for Valiant, that he's writing like Darth Vader for Star Wars at Marvel Comics when that was one of their premier titles. Obviously, he ruined that one, and he certainly ruined Exo Manowar. And he didn't know a single fucking thing about Exo Manowar. And then when you get to the Clunrad version of Exo Manowar, maybe a little bit closer, but they didn't have any idea about Exo Manowar. This week, we got the Fred Van Lint Exo Manowar Resurgence of the Valiant Universe issue, or I guess it was last week. And he seems to actually have an idea who Exo Manowar is, but the tone of the book was like a Tom and Jerry cartoon. It was so freaking weird. And how am I supposed to trust Valiant Comics and what they've been doing the last 3 or 4 years since they've acquired the company and been under DMG Entertainment to do an Absolute style universe or an Ultimate style universe or an Energon style universe, which have nothing to, like, they're not even in concept very close to each other, when they can't get their own characters right. They can't get the own tone of their universe right. They can't make anything feel special or important. They can't sell comic books right now. Why would anyone think that they're going to be able to do anything with this other than fuck it up? Because that's all we've really seen them do for several years now. One series was worth reading, and it was the Shadow Man stuff. And then the end of the Ninja K stuff was good, but that had started under Dinesh. And it's just, every time they reboot, and there's been a lot of reboots, it seems like every 6 months or 9 months, they're announcing this new reboot that they're doing on the Valiant universe. And it's always more of the same because they haven't really replaced the people in charge. They haven't found their new Warren Simmons, like their new editor-in-chief that actually likes the characters and knows how to manage a universe. It's Lisa, whatever her name is. I forget her last name, but she was hired at the exact same time, I think, that Heather Antos was. And the only reason that she's still there is because she's so bad, she can't even get hired at IDW like Heather Antos is. Everybody that had talent has already abandoned ship because, you know, they saw what happened in this company during the COVID stuff. They had to shut down their entire building and sell it off and sublet it and stuff like this. They stopped publishing comic books for like a year and nobody noticed. For a full fucking year, they didn't. I think they probably produced 4 issues of comic books over a calendar year. No one even batted an eye because at this point they've driven off all their actual fans to the point that nobody even fucking cares anymore and they don't even notice. This is being described as a clean slate to fresh start, but not reinventing the wheel. They're also being careful not to use the word reboot and are committed to keeping old school Valiant fans happy. So how could they have their cake and eat it too? How will they do a clean slate relaunch of a line of titles without upsetting current readers? One word, Multiverse. The end of Resurgence will detail how this all comes about in the actual storyline itself, but expect a DC Rebirth style embracing of all different eras of Valiant while also making these new versions of the characters that placed them in different settings and scenarios. The scariest words in all of comic books are, we're going to reconceptualize your characters for a modern audience, or we've decided we're going to introduce a multiverse that will fix all of our problems. The multiverse is only going to make everything worse. Are you kidding me? You can't manage an actual functioning shared superhero comic book universe as is. Now you're going to introduce multiple variants of each character and have them interact with each other and the multiverses kind of combining with each other. Marvel and DC have enormous editorial teams and they can't do it. Nobody these days seems to be able to pull off a multiverse to any semblance of actual success. This isn't a way to placate the Valiant fans that you still have, which you don't because all the Valiant fans actually left, and keep your current fans happy. You don't have current fans. Nobody's even buying the books. No one's paying attention, but also bring in a new audience. Nobody cares about Valiant Comics. You had a core audience, and you could have grown it slowly and slowly if you had stayed with the core concepts and direction of what Valiant Comics was under Dinesh Shamdasani. Obviously, that's never going to happen, and this is just evolving into an enormous clusterfuck to where they've described it's going to be like Energon, it's going to be like Absolute, it's going to be like Ultimate, and now it's going to be like DC Rebirth, which had nothing to do with any of that stuff. DC Rebirth wasn't alternate versions of the heroes. It was finding the very best heroes or very best version of the heroes throughout the history of DC Comics and putting them all in one universe, interacting together, continuing the timeline that had already been established. It was an enormous apology on the part of Jeff Johns, Dan Didio, and everyone at DC Comics to fans saying, hey, we're sorry we're screwed up the New 52 so bad and that we didn't appreciate canon and continuity. We decided to prioritize storytelling over history and continuity, and we fucked everything up in the process doing it. Rebirth is a completely different animal and all that stuff. You're sitting here like 4 or 5 fucking paragraphs into this article going, what the fuck is this thing supposed to be? It's going to claim to be everything so that nobody even knows what to expect? That's essentially what we're getting out of all this stuff. And if you're a Valiant fan, and I certainly am, you're just going, what the fuck is even happening here? I don't even know what this is supposed to be. And yeah, it just gets weirder and weirder and weirder. Writers are being told to bring back old heroes and villains and concepts that lie dormant for a while, and that the final issue of Resurgence by Fred Van Lint, hitting in January, is meant to set all this up with both a line of new reader-friendly titles launching and more retro-inspired projects coming later. Fans should see the first of the Valiant Beyond books in March of 2025 solicitations, doing a relaunch while also bringing back previously discarded continuity and characters. That's called having your Valiant cake and eating it too. No. What that's called is fucking ridiculous, stupid, tried so many times and never actually working. You can't go out there and create a comic book specifically for a new audience to bring them in, while at the same time producing another comic book under the same exact line for the audience that you want to retain. Either they like Valiant Comics or they don't. And the fact that Fred Van Lent, I have nothing against Fred Van Lent. He seems like a nice guy, probably the nicest guy in the world, probably the salt of the earth. He is not a very good writer. And the fact that he's like their headliner just really shows you how far this company has fallen. And if you're a Valiant fan, you know, I'm sure you've noticed that Resurgence of the Valiant Universe isn't much of a resurgence. Not a whole lot of quality there. Not a whole lot of good stuff. Nothing really to get you excited. But then you hear all this extra news and you're like, oh, even the little bit that I invested in the idea that there would be a resurgence of the Valiant Universe was a wasted effort, because as soon as the resurgence of the Valiant Universe is over, we're getting into Valiant Beyond, because that's not enough. Like the Valiant Comics heroes and the history that they do have isn't enough to placate them. We need to do a bunch of other stuff that no one ever asked for. If you want to fix the Valiant Comics line, I will tell you exactly how to do it. Make the characters work. Make the superhero universe shared and tell exciting stories. You can't do the three basic components of a shared superhero universe at this point. You certainly can't do multiverses. You certainly can't do an Energon ultimate absolute rebirth style universe, as if any of those things are fucking related to each other while you're doing all those basic concepts. If you can't make an Exo Manamore book readable, why the fuck would anybody ever trust you to do anything else like that? And I don't want to see a new, version of the Exo Manowar armor. I don't want to see a new take on Rai. I don't want to see a new take on Ninja K. Get the original take right, and then maybe you can do Valiant Beyond. But until then, go fuck yourselves, because this is absolutely ridiculous. The most abused fan base in all of comic books, without a shadow of a doubt. Valiant Comics, they had a dedicated fan base. It wasn't huge, but they were dedicated. They bought basically everything. And now basically they buy nothing, which is exactly what they deserve. If you like what we're doing here on Think Critical YouTube and you would like some more talk about comic books, there's plenty more over on the Patreon. There's a link in the video description. We got lots of podcasts with Doc, Jim, Aaron, Nick Weiser, other people out there, certainly lots of me out there. And you get all the audio files of every one of our YouTube videos. If you want to listen to it on Spotify, you don't want to have the stupid YouTube player open. Go check that one out. There's a link in the video description. Hope to see you there very, very soon. Check out all the tiers. There's one waiting for you that you will love.